Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 27 of How to HR. Hi there, I'm Kristy-Lee. I'm your host for this weekly video series where we bring you a little snippet, piece of information or strategy around HR, around your team that you can take and use and implement in your business. This video series is designed to be a really quick and simple grab and go series where you can take what you need and go and implement it straight into your small to medium sized business. Now, I hope you're doing well, whatever you've been up to in the last week. I am still in lockdown, caught up in what is known as the Greater Sydney area, although I am away off Sydney. And I'm at the moment, at the time of bringing you this video, more than half of our population here in Australia is in some form of lock. So many of you will be impacted by that at the moment. If that is you, I hope you're doing okay. I know if you've got a business that has been impacted and you can't operate right now, that is extraordinarily difficult, a time to go through. If you've got a team you're trying to manage, trying to keep everyone connected. And of course, on top of that, if you are a parent and also homeschooling and juggling that as well, there's just a lot going on for a lot of people right now. So firstly, I just want to check in and make sure you're doing okay. If you have questions, comments, anything that you need a hand with when it comes to your team, please just let us know, and we are very, very happy to help with that. If you're joining us from outside of our Facebook group, the best way to connect with us is inside that free Facebook group, where I'm very happy to share anything I can with that group. The group is called HR Support for Australian Businesses. So if you're catching us on YouTube or on our Facebook page, I encourage you to head over to Facebook groups and join HR Support for Australian Businesses. It is a great community. We do not take ourselves too seriously, but if there is a problem, I'm always there to point you in the right direction when it comes to anything to do with your team. Now, today I thought it was quite topical, given there are so many of us in lockdown currently, to talk to you about leading during uncertain times, because what we know, if nothing else right now, is that there is constant uncertainty. We kind of feel like we're getting back to, I don't want to use the word normal, I just feel like that's a bit naff right now, but we get back to the way things previously were. We might even think about planning a holiday, or we're thinking strategically about business and what the next level of growth is going to be, or bringing on a new team member, and suddenly we're forced back into restrictions or back into lockdown, or we've got suppliers or customers impacted by things like lockdowns in other states. So no matter where you are, this can really impact us at various times. So if nothing else, we are in an environment that is really tinged with quite a bit of uncertainty at the moment. And that can be tough as a leader. It can be tough as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, to figure out the way through. We can just sometimes feel quite fatigued with all the decisions we have to make during uncertain times. And typically we are people that like to think we're pretty much in control of things, and we always know what the next step is and where we're going, and we've got it all figured out. That is our nature in the entrepreneurial land. However, when something that is totally outside of our control, like government restrictions, forces us to change, it can feel a little like we're out of our comfort zone. It's not the arena we like to operate in, not necessarily the arena we necessarily thrive in either. But it is where we are right now. And I think the best thing we can do is figure out what actions we can take as leaders and entrepreneurs to lead well during times of uncertainty, because this isn't the end of any uncertain period. I think probably most of us, when this first impacted us in March 2020, we thought we'll just deal with this for a few months, it's going to be over and everything will be fine. We know that's not the case now. We know we're a way off that being the case for quite some time here in Australia, certainly given our immunisation rate. So we have to assume that there will be more uncertainty coming to us in the future, as well as the uncertainty that we need to navigate right now. And it's difficult when you've got a team, because they look to you for that leadership. They look to you for direction, for certainty. And when you're uncertain, it can be really tricky to figure out how to provide that sense of certainty for your team. Now, we touched on a lot of the things we're going to talk about today back when the pandemic started, back in early 2020, but it was very different times then. It was kind of like a crisis situation where it was all unknown, where we again assumed that this was just going to be something we would do for a few months and then get out of. So crisis is slightly different to uncertainty, but we did talk about a lot of the same things at that time when we're talking about leading through crisis. So what I thought today we would do on How to HR is that I would share with you 5 tips and strategies that I recommend to you to help you lead your team during a time of uncertainty. So these are 5 things. You could do all 5, or you could just take 1 or 2 takeaways that would really work for you and your team right now to help bring everyone together, to help ensure you're all working in the same direction, because you want your business to be around post any lockdowns, post any uncertainty. But if you lose your vision, if you lose your way right now, it's going to be harder to crawl that back. So this is a time about making sure you are even clearer on that vision, even clearer on those objectives, those things you need your employees working towards, even clearer on any change that you may have had to make as a result of this uncertainty, because it's okay to make a change as well. Just because we were heading in one direction, if things need to change, that is totally okay. And it's about them bringing the team over to that new direction that you're heading in. So as I said, I've got 5 tips, strategies, pieces of advice for you today. Let's run through them and we'll unpack them one at a time, okay? The first piece of advice I have for you is that it is okay to pause for a moment. I think quite typically our nature as leaders and as entrepreneurs is to just keep moving. And when you're moving in any direction, just trying to put out fires or just moving for the sake of moving, sometimes that is not always helpful. Sometimes pausing can be incredibly powerful in getting your mind in the right place and also helping you get very clear about where you need to go next. So there is a lot of power in taking a pause to figure out what the next best step is. It also is a very powerful way for you to figure out some certainty within a world of uncertainty. There will be some things within your control. There will be some things, even in the most uncertain time, that you will be able to have some sense of control over, or some sense of knowing that if I do this, then that's the next action that we need to take. But when you're in the weeds, literally, and your head's spinning and you're just trying to keep moving, you're making 1 billion decisions a day and you're totally uncertain, it's very difficult for that next step or that thing you can control to become clear to you. So importantly, the first tip I have for you is that it is okay to pause. Now, I don't mean pausing in terms of stopping, and I don't mean pausing in terms of getting stuck in decision paralysis and then not taking any action at all. But I do mean a very deliberate, a very strategic pause for you to actually figure out the lay of the land and to figure out what your options are and what the possible scenarios are to get out of this. This might be a pause to figure out, okay, we're in lockdown. I know my staff can't all work from home. Maybe you've got a factory, maybe you're manufacturing and you can't do that right now. What can we do right now? What are the options? And if this person can't work, what's the options for them? Because it might not be the same for all of your team. But until you take a moment to pause, your head's going to keep spinning and you're not going to get that clarity. So tip number 1 is lean into the power of a pause to get your head in the game and figure out where you need to go next. Tip number 2, this is an obvious one, but communicate. Your team need to know what you're thinking, what the next steps are. Even if you're not certain of the answer, at least communicate that you are considering the options, that you don't have the answer now, but that you will have the answer, that you're working on the answer, that you're looking at all the possible scenarios. Communicate with the team what you do know right now. It might be that what you do know is that we aren't allowed to do these things, but that there may be a way for us to do other things, and I just need to figure out how that's going to look. So communication doesn't mean necessarily giving direction or having all the answers, but communicating what you know, what you're working on to figure out, and what the next step's going to be. It might be that you'll be back in touch with them tomorrow with more communication. That might be the next step. Or it might be that for now, this is what we're going to do, and I'll know more in a period of time. So it's not about having all the answers. Now, one of the most important aspects, of course, of communication during uncertain times is not to do all the talking. You really need to listen to your team. Now, of course, when you've got 1 million things going on and you're trying to fix everything, It can feel a little bit like a burden to have to sort of listen to how the team's feeling, but it is so important to create some space to be present for them during these uncertain times. Just the opportunity for them to voice how they're feeling, for them to let you know how stressed they are, how concerned they are about their job, how overwhelmed they are by having all the kids at home and homeschooling, whatever it is that's going on for them, create some space to listen and really be present to listen to that. It doesn't mean that you have to carry the burden of their problems with you. It's just opening up the communication so they can then just get that off their chest, essentially, and you know where they stand. You know where their pain points are, you know where their stresses are, and that might be helpful information for you as you navigate forward here as well. Also, when you're communicating with the team, make sure that the communication is as transparent as it can be. Don't say everything's totally fine if everything's not totally fine. That's not going to help your team. So it can be a matter of saying, I understand that this is really stressful. I'm going to tell you everything I can about where we stand right now, and we're going to continue to work through this together. Let your team have a say in some potential scenarios. They may see opportunities that you hadn't even considered. They may come up with some really creative ways that you can do something right now to help keep your business moving forward. So really have regular communication. Now, this can look all different ways for you right now. Perhaps it's a Zoom call. Perhaps it's a phone call. Perhaps you're still able to see your team. If you're in lockdown, that might be tricky, but if you are, great. But find ways to have that communication. And it may almost feel like you're over-communicating during a time of uncertainty, but the more certainty you can give, and regular communication creates a sense of certainty with your people, that is a positive thing that will help keep your team where they need to be in terms of moving forward. So tip number 2, the obvious one, is communicate. Now, number 3 is to act promptly. Now, when I say promptly, I do not mean hurriedly. I don't want you hurrying and rushing into decisions that you're not certain of. And this is where we go back to point 1, which is the power of the pause. But once you've made a decision that that's what you need to do not dilly-dally, get it done. It shows your team that you are taking forward action, and again gives them that sense of certainty during uncertain times. So act promptly in making decisions and then taking action. If you say to your team, this is what we're going to do next, don't take 3 days to do it. Put the wheels in motion to get it done. If they see you pulling back and not acting promptly after you said you've made a decision, that will create uncertainty and concern with them, which can be really challenging. You don't want your team any more uncertain than they need to be during these times, because that sort of has really, a follow-on effect when it comes to things like engagement, their focus at work, when they're doing the things they need to be doing. So act promptly once you've made a decision about the next course of action. Don't forget, the decisions you make are just the next decision. It doesn't mean you can't make a different decision after that if it was the wrong direction or if it was the wrong decision. This is just the next decision. It's not the forever decision. I think as soon as you take that weight off your shoulders, that this decision I'm making now does not mean this is the forever decision. It is just the best decision for now, and it's the next best thing to do. Then there's a lot less pressure on that decision making for you. So number 3 is to act promptly. Number 4 is to stay connected. Now, in last week's episode of How to HR, we looked at keeping connected with your hybrid team. We were talking about the fact that there's this mix of a workplace now where many people are remote and will be forevermore, and some are in the office, and there's this combination. So you may want to go back and listen to that episode as well. But staying connected with your team during these uncertain times and helping them stay connected with each other is critical to keep that important social fabric of your workplace intact during difficult times. Now, there's all different ways you can do this. Do you remember when this pandemic first started? We were all really good at doing this. We were creating Friday drinks and team lunches where people were ordering people in. We were having family games nights and all sorts of stuff on Zoom. When we sort of started to I guess, get used to this current environment, and we did move back to some people being at work and all the lockdowns were over and that kind of thing, all of that went by the wayside. But this is an opportunity to make sure you either tap back into those things or create different ways to do it, but make sure you have ways for people to keep connected. It could be as simple as making sure you're encouraging them to have virtual coffee chats or to catch up with each other about certain things, or even just if you're completely tools down right now and you can't work at all, then even creating an environment where you can get together online socially just to check in with each other and see how everyone's going. Not necessarily a work task, but just a way to keep connected. Now, if you've got people working from home throughout this period, if they're in lockdown or they're working from home more permanently as part of their arrangements, then making sure that everything you do within your business is focused on an online employee first. So rather than building your team meetings around those that were in attendance and then just trying to figure out how to get the others involved, flip the thinking. Work everything you do around what works best for our online staff, our work from home staff, and then we're going to work around that. Part of the connection as well is figuring out how this all looks for people right now, depending on where they're at, what they're up to with their personal life. Again, they could be homeschooling. They could have other people in their household working from home, which can be problematic in terms of having meetings. If there's lots of other noise around it, you know, some people are on lots of meetings all day or whatever it looks like. Just being understanding about what this current work environment looks like for them and how you can keep connection in a way that's manageable for them, because you certainly don't want to overwhelm people during this time either. And my fifth and final tip today is to stay future focused. This is ultimately a temporary scenario, longer than we thought, of course, but ultimately temporary. Your business will continue beyond this. What is the future looking like? Now, perhaps the future vision has changed somewhat, or at least the short-term future vision may have changed. That's okay. Like I said, change isn't always a bad thing. But communicate what that future looks like and stay focused on that end goal. Stay focused on that next big project, that next big objective, the next goal you're trying to achieve as a business. Don't let that future vision go by the wayside right now. Tying your employees back into that future vision and staying very focused on that's still the end game here, we're just going to take a different path to get there, will help keep them engaged, keep them motivated, and again create this calm and certainty that they are safe. Safety in the workplace, psychological safety, is something Simon Sinek talks a lot about in his work, and it is just merely creating an environment where your employee feels comfortable and safe at work. And part of that is around having certainty that they are involved in this future vision and there is a path forward, even though it perhaps doesn't look like what we thought it looks like, or even though possibly the goalposts have changed, there is still a way that we are moving forward. So let's recap those 5 top tips for today. Keeping your team connected, leading well during uncertain times, I know can be sometimes daunting and sometimes stressful, but it's so important that you step up right now to help your team navigate through the uncertainty. So my 5 top tips today here on How to HR to help your team, help you lead your team through an uncertain time is, number 1, don't forget the power of a pause. It's okay to take a pause, to get your head in the game and to figure out what the next best step is. Communicate openly, transparently, regularly with your team, and don't forget to listen as part of that communication. Act promptly. Once you've made a decision, get it done. Make sure you put the wheels in motion to make that action happen. Keep connected with your team and encourage them to keep connected with each other. A simple phone call during these times goes a very long way. And remain future focused. What's ahead and how are we going to get there? If you are in the process of a pretty uncertain time at the moment, please know that you're not alone. As I said at the beginning of today's episode, if you're not watching this from our free Facebook group, please come over there and join us, HR Support for Australian Businesses. It's a great group, lots of like-minded business owners, leaders or managers in that group, and we are there to support each other. So if someone's having a tough time or uncertain time, that is a very great place for you to be. So please jump over there and join us if you are currently watching this from either our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. That is it for me for today. I hope you've enjoyed that episode of How to HR, and I hope if you are being impacted by the current lockdowns and restrictions, you are doing okay, but please reach out if you need any assistance. I look forward to coming back to you next week for episode 28 of How to HR. And as always, if you have a topic or something you would like me to cover on an episode of How to HR, simply put a comment under this video. Let me know what that topic is, and I will make sure that episode happens for you. That's it from me for today. Have a fabulous week. Thanks, everyone, and I can't wait to see you next week.